Good morning. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. And this morning on Cool Your Heels with Lillian, our two special guests are Troy and Shannon Zeeman, or Shannon and Troy Zeeman, depending on which order you want to put the names. For the women's sliver, I put Shannon's names first. And for the men, I put Troy's name in for the network people. Okay. They have written a book called Active Shooter Prep, and I'm going to let them explain why they wrote a book and title it that way. These are the folks, ladies and gentlemen, who went through the Las Vegas locally grown terror group that hit the city, and they were caught in the middle of it. And even though they're a little more trained than the normal folks are, they still were caught off guard, and something they don't want their own children or any other children or adults to have to participate in unless you know what to do. Note, if a car comes racing down the block, please listen to the inner voice and get the hell out of the way. So, Shannon and Troy, could you please give a little background on who you are and what you did during the time the terror struck you?
Absolutely. Thank you first for having us. We really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you and all of your listeners. Well, Troy and I have been married for almost 20 years. We're friends in high school and have known each other for quite a long time. Troy has been a police officer now for over 25 years. And obviously I've been a police officer wife for almost 20. And we love going to outdoor concert venues, particularly country music. In 2017, I had just finished chemotherapy from battling breast cancer and had gotten great news that I was recovering and surgeries were healing. And we all decided to go to a country music festival called Route 91 in Las Vegas. And it was a 3-day festival to celebrate and to have a great time. It was an amazing venue. We were having a fantastic time. And we were on the third day event. Last singer, who was Jason Aldean, when the unthinkable happened. And we were in the middle of an active shooter event. To be quite honest, so I have no tactical training experience or anything. I'm just a civilian, learned a little bit more because of my husband's background, but I did not realize that we were being shot at. I thought they were fireworks, like the old school fireworks that someone brings in on a string and it's poppity pop, pop, pop. And in my head, I was like, who is this idiot that brought in fireworks and is doing that? And so I never even realized until the third barrage that we were actually in an active shooter event. Troy was able to figure that out a little bit faster. You can tell him.
He knows the sound of a bullet, right?
I'm sorry?
You know the sound of a bullet.
Yeah, well,
There's a distinct sound to them.
Yes, they very much do have a distinct sound. In this case, it's actually a little bit different because the person was 1,000 feet away from the venue, up on a 32nd floor of a hotel and inside of a hotel. He was actually what we call in a sniper position. And because he's in that sniper position, the sounds of the bullets are much different than they are actually on a range when you're actually shooting the rounds. So because of that, it did hit me as odd, the sound, but it didn't immediately hit me as gunfire. As I turned around to assess that situation of the odd sounding, then a second barrage came down and I was able to see gunfire come into the venue and strike some people, which then obviously I reacted with my training and experience that I had in the law enforcement. So I've been training for active shooters since 1999, the Columbine shooting happened, I was working at the Los Angeles Police Department at the time, and the police departments and the national decision was that we as officers can't stand outside an active shooter event and wait for SWAT to come in. So they started a new tactic for officers that were on patrol, and that was our active shooter response. And that's when I started the training in '99 and just continued that training all the way up till today. So that helped out a lot in the Route 91 mass shooting.
Do they require you to wear those body cameras at all times? So in case of an event like this, you can capture on tape what's going on around you?
Not all departments have body cameras, but I believe Las Vegas Metro did have body cameras on. I believe so. But not all departments have those body cameras. It does definitely help in some circumstances of finding information and being able to train on that. Most of the training that law enforcement get for active shooter are after an active shooter event. They take all of the investigation, the videotapes and the voice tapes, and they bring them to different departments and have those departments train their officers to react in these different scenarios. Because an active shooter is so fluid and it's never something you can assess in a timely manner, it's very difficult to understand how it's going to go before it happens. So every situation is different. And because of that, we try to train on every situation that has happened in the past so that we can come accustomed to some of the basic tools that we would need in every one of those active shooter trainings. So that's what Shannon and I are bringing to everybody, is the basics that we know that could help you in every scenario, not just a specific scenario, but every scenario, and that every age person could learn from us and use that basic tactic that we're bringing so that they could use those basic tactics with some fundamental changes while the scenario is going on.
So is it, I mean, I was brought up kind of country, suburb, city type thing in Long Island. They still had farms and they still used shotguns to shoot foxes and two fitted soft boxes on top of that. So I knew the sound of a shotgun bullet as opposed to somebody who's just there practicing on beer cans or glass bottles. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I was told was drop to the ground, cradle your head, and let the herd stampede over you, but don't start running. Is that still the common thread of what civilians are being taught to do?
No. So back in '99, that was one of the things that all officers and law enforcement around the country taught, was to hide and just don't give conflict to the bad guy, so that hopefully the bad guy would just leave without hurting you, without any conflict. But we've learned over the last 20 years that conflict is really the only thing that is stopping the bad guys from continuing the mass murder. So we want to help by teaching people how to run and how to hide and how to fight. And those three basic tactics will help you and others survive these incidences. And we're trying to create such a great community that can fight active shooter and defeat them during the incident, that people, if they were to think about active shooters, they're not going to get the mass casualties that they wanted out of it. So maybe they're going to have to do something different. And that's what our intention is to stop active shooter completely.
Well, then if you're in the bottom of the ground, most people are not going to look up and say, that's like 90 feet away. Sounds like he's on the 4th floor. If I go in through the emergency, they don't think that way. The only people I know who think that way outside the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts are probably the kids who go into active service at 14 and 15. They have the special clubs for them, or they've been in OTC or, officer training or something. Most normal humans that I know of, they hear something unfamiliar and they panic and they start running blindly.
Yes.
So
that is, you're correct on that. And that's actually one of the things that we experienced, actually experienced in this situation. We had people that had never looked for any emergency exits, right? So immediately all they thought of was there was one entrance and exit at the venue, and we're up in the front of the stage and actually ran through the bullets coming down, and we saw them, a lot of them get shot in that effort, but they didn't have a plan, you know, because why would we ever think we're going to be in a shooting? Why would we think that we would need, unless you're a police officer? And that's what our friends used to always make fun of Troy when we would go to these events, like, here he goes, he's looking for the emergency exits, he wants to know what's going on. So we did see people just panicked and running. A lot of them couldn't process what was happening. We had where Troy and I were, when we were trying to help people get out safely, there were so many people that were just so scared, they were frozen. You know, their bodies couldn't move, or their minds couldn't process what was happening. And through our training and everything, we talk about, if you see someone that's in this state of fear, or if you are, ways that you can help them or help yourself to, you know, come back, come back, start thinking, make a plan. We talk about how when you run with a purpose and a plan. And then when you get to that point, then you make another plan, and you assess everything that you do. So these are all different tools that we have because of Troy's police training. But it's very different, because it used to be when he would train, it would just be tactical. But now that he has experienced something as a civilian and seen how civilians react, and then also you have me there sometimes in the speech, in our presentations, going, Troy, nobody understands what that means. You got to bring it down to our level. But we talk about the experiences that we had, how he was able to help two people that were just walking like zombies, knew absolutely nothing what they were doing in the light where, you know, they could be seen, was able to grab them and bring them to safety. There were points where I was trying to lift people up because they were so frozen and they couldn't run. And that, you know, I have to deal with that feeling, that emotion now, where Troy told me, you can only save the ones that can come. And I had to leave those people behind. So we talk about not only the tactical training that Troy's had, we talk about our personal experience that we've had, and then we talk about all the ways that you can survive. The right way to run, the right way to hide, the right way to fight, in essence, to give you that hope and that empowerment, so you don't feel like you have no chance.
I know you're always taught in an airplane to look for the exit, so you know which door that's closest to you. And I know in school you're always taught to look for the exit doors, because you never know when you have to run out because of a fire. So it would almost make sense for people to learn as early as kindergarten that you have to have a life exit in case the unavoidable happens. So you should know certain things in order to, you know, you're supposed to have a plan for getting out of your house when there's a fire.
Right.
I mean, I learned how to climb a rope ladder at 3 years old. It was terrifying, but it was more terrifying for the thought of being burned to a cinder. Because those things are, you know, I burned my hand on the stove. That much I did get. Yeah. So it would make sense to be taught of what to do should something happen during any kind of disaster, whether they're bullets or bombs or dogs coming for your throat or something like that. You always need to have a contingency plan. I always have contingency plans. Never know when you're going to need it, but you should have it. Is it true that if you zigzag, it makes it more difficult for the person to get a fix on you?
Not necessarily. It depends on the zigzag, actually. So if you understand it, as you did, Lillian, you shot guns. So if you took the point of a cone and put it at the barrel of your gun, and you took that cone and you just allowed it to go out as far as possible, it would be an infinite cone, we'll say. If you zigzag within that cone, pretty easy to hit you at any point.
Yeah, because it enlarges everything for the bullets shooting out. Yeah, okay.
And not only that, but as I move my sights, as long as I'm within that cone, I'm only moving my sights very shortly. It's like 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, 1/2 of an inch. That's as much as I'm moving my sights. Now, if you were to zigzag the cone out at 100 yards, I would have to move my sights pretty far to actually hit you. But if I'm close enough, that zigzag really doesn't help in such a close proximity. But what we do train is we train that if you are going to run, you're going to find stationary objects to run behind every time you find them. So what happens to your human mind in a gunfight is that your human mind is actually trying to picture something, and it's going to take mathematical equations of distance and time. And that's what's going to allow you to put your sights on that item and actually hit that item. Now, that being said, if you go in and out of eyesight, of a human eyesight, you have to reevaluate every time you find that target, just like you did when you were hunting. If the animal walked away from you and you get out of your eyesight, you had to wait for it to come back into eyesight and re-engage it. And that's what we're teaching. We're teaching how to run in that manner. We're teaching how to run laterally instead of longitudinally, and that longitudinally is straight away. So if you're running straight away from a gun, you're going to get hit a lot easier than if you ran side to side of a gun. And if you ran side to side of a gun, I actually have to move my entire body to try to hit you as you run in that speed. And my mind may not be able to catch up to you with all of the stress that's being invited onto that person who decided to do this mass violence. So there's a lot of things, like Shannon said, there's a lot of physiological effects that not only affect the victim, but it affects the suspect. We as officers go through it constantly. Every time we get into a gun battle, every time we get into a situation where we feel like our lives are being threatened, there's a lot of stress on us. Our peripheral vision goes from 180 degrees to 30 to 40 degrees. And knowing that your peripheral vision shortens, that's what we call tunnel vision. Not only do victims go through that, but suspects go through that. So we try to explain these things to give advantages to victims who thinks they have the disadvantage. But in reality, there's a lot of advantages that victims have in these active shooters that they could utilize to defeat the shooter. And that's really what we're teaching all the time, is how to find these advantages in the environment you're in at that moment.
So if you find a place to hide, it's probably better you turning yourself sideways to give them less of a target to shoot at rather than being full frontal.
Oh, absolutely. Even in gunfighting 101 from the Western times, if you saw they would stand 10 feet and shoot each other. If a person bladed themselves, we call it blading, basically turning your body sideways, you're a much less target than you are turning your shoulders.
That's what I would think.
Absolutely.
So you teach that as well. I mean, I'm a pretty quick study. And I learn things very quickly on my feet, something you learn. And I'm a street kid. I'm from New York City. You learn a lot of things on the street.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I did. But not everybody are street kids.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of the country now is under attack that wasn't under attack 50 or 60 years ago. And the people there and the kids certainly do not have any clues of how to really protect themselves should their peacefulness be shattered within a second. So to me, it almost sounds like we should hold national terror days, which the citizens are also put through the steps of what they need to do. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but you're talking about human lives at the moment, and you're talking about mostly kids who seem to be targets all the time now. And it seems and make a lot more sense to me to make sure that you're taught how to protect yourself by going through a drill that actually puts you through their paces.
Well, so in our training, that's one of the things that we hope is that the tools that we're giving to everyone, if let's say we're at a company, that the mom that's sitting through our presentation can actually take the tools that we're teaching and go home and at the dinner table teach their families what we've taught them, because we do teach in a very safe, calm environment, and we make it very easy to understand so anybody can spread the word. We don't want it to be where you have to take our training so that you can get any of this information. Like, our goal is to try and get this information out to everyone. But we don't do the training where it's like a mock active shooter event. The topic and concept is scary enough. We try to make everyone feel safe. We try to make everyone feel empowered, and we try to give them the tools that they can use any day, whether they're at the grocery store, whether they're at, at their child's at school, whether at the park, and that it's retainable knowledge that their brain is able to process. So we're not trying to instill fear or to scare anybody or to say, bang, bang, you're dead. We're trying to talk about real day situations that they can take away and learn from, because we feel just like any muscle that you use, you have to continue to train it and to learn from it. And just from a really quick scenario, in our opinion, that's not where you're going to be able to have that like a takeable education. Did I say that right?
Sure.
I know that if you watch the news today and you speak to a lot of single women, and there are a lot more of them running around these days, widows, divorcees, just plain not married, and they tell you they watch the news and they see somebody being abducted. They watch the news and they see somebody shooting up a grocery store because they had a grudge about somebody, or they got fired and they couldn't handle it. So it makes sense to me that you should have some kind of knowledge of how to protect yourself. I mean, people tell me, oh, I took karate and I got red belt. And I'm thinking, that's very nice and all. But from what the soldiers tell me, and I've been out with quite a few, they're trained. And they tell me that unless you're really trained, that kind of knowledge isn't going to help you, because your body doesn't catch up with your mind. And it's your mind that controls the rest of your body.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that. And that is absolutely true. And that's what law enforcement is trained on all the time, is your mind is what wins fights. Your mind is what protects you, and your mind is what gives you your advantages. And that's one of the things that we do. And just like Shannon said, we want everybody to be trained. One of the reasons why we wrote the book this year is because our training got stifled by the COVID-19. And so we did a lot of Zoom training, but it wasn't in-person training. And we lost a lot of people to train this year because of that in-person training. So we wrote the book, and that book is giving you the empowerment and making you learn how to take the advantage back from a disadvantaged situation. Officers have to always react to a bad situation. We're not taught to go in proactive in a death situation. We're taught to react to it. So we're already behind the curve. Every officer in America is behind the curve when it becomes a death situation. And that's what we're teaching people, is how do you take back the advantage in a situation where you feel like you have no advantage at all. And that's what we're training you to do. And really, a lot of that is all about your mind, your physiological effects, how your mind actually works in stressful situations. We teach those things so that you can kind of understand it and teach other people. And then if they understand it, we all have more advantages in these bad situations than we think we had. And that empowers you. And it gives you that confidence that you could actually win. One of the stories in the book is about a person at a real estate office who thought that his office was so bad in this building that he was going to die if there was a violent occurrence in the office. And so after we went through our training with him, he said to us, I'm so happy you guys were here, because I feel like I can win this now. Even though I'm here and I'm in a bad situation, I feel like I can beat an active shooter who comes into the room. And that's what we're trying to do, is give you that confidence, give you options. And if you can remember these options, then when your brain goes into that stressful situation, your amygdala will search your hippocampus and it will send it straight to your frontal lobe, and you will already within milliseconds know what to do. And that's what we're trying to give you. If you don't have the tools, then your frontal lobe will never have anything to even search for. So that's kind of one of the things that we're also trying to give those people that we train.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I've had so many of my friends tell me, well, I've gone out and bought a gun, and I'm thinking, big deal. They can take it from you and shoot you with the damn thing.
Right.
So you're actually giving them permission to kill you.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't understand people who do that. And yet I have friends who are armed to the teeth for the coming invasion. And I'm looking at them going, no, I'm sorry. You're more at risk now than when you first went out and put your arsenal together. Of course,
Yeah.
you can't tell that's all the, well, whatever, groups out west.
I can say this too, is during our trainings in the last couple of years, we've had people come up and ask us if we give tactical training and actually armed firearms training. And I tell them no, because the first thing you need to learn is how to get your brain right. What are your options in your brain first? And that's what they teach officers. Officers, the first part of the academy of the officer is all about mental stuff, learning the laws, learning the Constitution, and getting you to understand how disadvantaged you are and how to get that advantage back. And then they give you your gun later. So the same type of training that we're trying to train people in the civilian world, we're trying to train the same type of young officer. We're not giving them that active shooter training where you run into a building and start shooting people, because even officers who are on duty, they've been there for years and years. You start throwing them through those active shooter trainings and they're so stressed, they don't remember anything. It takes them 12, 13, 14 times just to start becoming proficient at that. And that's a hard thing to do. How do we do that with civilians? They don't have the time or the resources to train that often in that kind of stuff. So we're giving you the stuff that we believe you can retain and utilize and actually empower you to defeat an active shooter.
And to stay within the limits of the law.
Yes.
Which
Right.
I find fascinating, because so many people cite self-defense. If I didn't do it, he would have killed me. And I'm thinking, really? Because I
Right.
know it's very difficult to kill a person, despite what people think. You have to really have a certain type of mindset in order to go out and take somebody else's life.
Well, you also have
it's difficult enough to discipline your kids.
Yeah. Well, in the situation that we were in with Route 91, we had so many first responders, whether they were police or military or nurse or doctors or anything like that. And you think about it, nobody was allowed to have a weapon at that event. And nor if you were to ask us, our shooter wasn't even in the event, so it wouldn't have helped us in that fashion anyways. But so all these people had to have some way of getting help or getting out or protecting themselves just with their mind and their body. And so, not always, whether you have a weapon or not, you're not going to have that with you at all times. And so that's what we're trying to do, is teach something for everyone, whether you own,
Arms.
No, I'm trying to think of the spray.
Pepper spray?
Pepper spray. It's not bear spray. I have bear spray. Whether you have pepper spray, whether you have a firearm, whether you have, your keys, whether, you just have a shopping bag, you never know where it's going to happen. I had cowboy boots, a cowboy hat, and a drink in my hand. That's all I had, so you have to put it into your brain as Troy is processing and have that idea of, if I'm in this situation, what are my options? And those are doable anywhere you go.
I could believe that. I wish I had your book, was it 40 years ago when I was raped?
Yep.
I didn't have any options. So I didn't know what to do. Right. I did know I wanted to keep him away from my son, and that was my number one option, and I did it.
Right. And
apparently I was the only one of his victims who lived, so I must have done something right in that respect.
Absolutely.
But everything else, you just panic.
Yeah.
Or in my case, you say, calm down, this is real, let's deal with it. But not everybody's like that.
No.
I agree. And just getting back to your firearms, the people that who just buy firearms and say, I'm going to protect myself with this. There's a lot of training that goes behind that. Even top trained military and police, we both get our guns taken away from us here and there. And there's been countless times where we've been killed by our own guns. And it's something that people who want to get firearms have to understand, that a firearm does not protect you against all enemies. You have to be able to utilize it. The malfunctions that are involved in it. There's all kinds of stuff that we are constantly trained on, because guns don't just protect you and keep people away from you.
Oh, please tell the National Rifle Association about that, because I really think they need to understand what they're doing, because I don't think they really understand the nature of the beast in that respect. So, Troy, Shannon, please tell everybody where they can buy your book, where they can get in touch with you, and all that other important information.
We would love to do that. Thank you. So this is what our book looks like. It's called Active Shooter: How to Survive the Most Important 4 Minutes of Your Life. You can get it on Amazon, and you can also get it off of our website. And if you purchase it on our website, you get an autographed book. So see, we're really special. Our website is activeshooterprep.org. On our website, you can email us, which Lillian so nicely put at the bottom of the screen. It also gives you our direct phone line, so you can call us. We are available anytime to answer questions anyway that anybody has, whether you're going to have our training or not. We just want to help people and inform. In our book, it's a 2-part. The first part explains our story of Route 91. So we bring you in as if you're actually there with us, explaining to you what our thought process was, what was going on at the time with us, and also with the shooter, and the tactics that we used and the emotions that we used to get us out of there. And the second half is a description of our training. So it's not, unfortunately, going to give you everything as if we come to your facility, because we couldn't make the book that long, but it's going to give you some great advice, tangible things that you can do, and hope if you are in an active shooter or stressful situation.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, and adults of all ages, you can see this interview all over again on youtube.com/PWR Network _PW Talk Radio, and youtube.com/PWR Talk. You can also hit her on facebook.com/Lillian Cauldwell 35, which is then the station, Passionate World Talk Radio. You can also find it at https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. And of course, we have the option of providing the video plus the audio. The audio will be heard on Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, iHeart, iTunes, Google, Amazon Music, you name it, we're there. And before we go away and stray, Emily Dickinson had this to say in 1870, "Truth is such a rare thing. It is delightful to tell it." Thank you all very much for listening. And remember, please keep listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.